Hello, and welcome to the Santa Paula Theater Center. My name is Elixio Flores, and it's my honor to introduce you to an exceptional group of artists and volunteers whose combined efforts bring the magic of live theater to Santa Paula and the greater Ventura County. In 1985, veteran professional actors Dana Elcar and Bill Lucking began a free acting workshop in the basement of the First Presbyterian Church of Santa Paula. In the first year of the workshop, over 150 people met, listened, and began speaking the common language of theater. The enthusiasm and energy generated by this dynamic experience gave birth to the Santa Paula Theater Center. During this first year, Reader's Theater productions of A Child's Christmas in Wales and glancing through the headlines toured Ventura County. Where others had looked and saw a storage place, this small group of artists looked and saw an opportunity to bring the theater arts to a small community. A stage was built, lights were mounted, sets were designed, and costumes sewn. In 1986, the church basement was converted into a cozy 40-seat theater. Overwhelming financial support by the community and shoestring budgeting allowed the first season to be presented to the public free for any and all who wished to attend. A board of directors was formed. In a total of 58 performances, 2,520 people attended. During the entire year, there were only 206 seats left vacant. A remarkable 92% attendance capacity. Santa Paula Theater was well on its way. Productions that year were Childhood, Zoo Story, Going to See the Elephant, and Room Service. The property that the Santa Paula Theater Center is located on is rich in the history of performing arts. From 1911 to 1916, pioneer silent film director Gaston Méliès and his Star Film Stock Company studio were located here. After Gaston's departure to Hollywood, Alice Dole McKevitt purchased the property to provide a home for the Santa Paula Eagle Club, whose express purpose was to bring the cultural arts to Santa Paula. The prestigious Los Angeles architectural firm of Hunt and Burns were employed to create the beautiful and elegant craftsman-style building you see here now. Hardwood maple floors, hand-cut stonework, and open-beam ceilings display the craftsman's handiwork. The grounds, now a city park, were designed as a traditional English garden, featuring redwood, pepper, oak, and pine trees, as well as a large fish pond in the center. Unfortunately, the fish pond is gone, but a beautiful, tranquil garden setting still remains. On January 1st, 1988, the building was given to the Santa Paula Theater by the Teague McKevitt Corporation through the Santa Paula Community Fund. After massive renovations to convert the building for performing arts, Santa Paula Theater Center opened its first season in April of 1988. The featured productions that year were Major Barbara, All the King's Men, Paint Your Face on a Drowning in the River, and my personal favorite, To Be Announced. In May 1988, the building was named to the National Registry of Historic Places. 2010 marks the 25th anniversary of the Santa Paula Theater Center from its inception in 1985. And what a wonderful 25 years it has been. At Santa Paula Theater Center, we strive to provide something for everyone's taste, while occasionally challenging our audiences to expand their theatrical boundaries. Join me now as we take a look at the rich history of this theatrical organization through the eyes of some of the people who were there at the beginning, as well as some of the newcomers. It is their hard work and dedication to the creative arts that creates the magic that is Santa Paula Theater Center.
These two men, Dana Elcar and Bill Lucking, were professional actors in Los Angeles, and both of them at different times had moved to this town to raise their families away from the hustle and bustle and artificiality of what they perceived LA to be. And so Dana and his wife Marianne Elcar came second. Bill Lucking and his family had lived here for quite a while, and someone told them right away that there was another professional actor living in town, and both of them were stage trained. And so they got together and started talking about, well, bloom where you are planted, and they were talking about what it would mean to start a theater here, and they just wanted to make sure that there was not only interest but also an economic base. Would the community support a theater? So they started out with a series of workshops and to just see if there was interest, and on the side they were also approaching community members to see if there was interest in financially supporting a theater, and so it kind of went from there. The Presbyterian Church here in Santa Paula, Bill Lucking and his family were members of that church, and they knew that there was this space down in their basement that was not being used. And it had a little platform stage, and I'm not sure, I don't think it had risers, but I think they built some risers right away, and we started out using folding chairs, and then eventually we got actual theater chairs from the Masonic Temple. They had some that they weren't using or they were replacing, and so we ended up being this 50-seat theater in the basement of the Presbyterian Church.
Well, I first started with the Theater Center when Dana Elcar and Bill Lucking got together and decided to offer a theater workshop in the basement of the Presbyterian Church here. And so I was one of several that met on a regular basis, weekly I believe it was, down in the basement, doing all sorts of theater games and exercises to help us learn how to be actors. And at the time I was doing it just more for the fun of it. I hadn't any plans to go on stage in any way, shape, or form.
Well, I attended the very second workshop that Dana Elcar and Bill Lucking were setting up to see if there was really an interest in theater in our community. And a friend of mine, Gene Beach, whose father is Ed Beach, and whose family is very established here in town, suggested I come to this workshop. And I went, and that was it.
And at the time we started actually performing plays, I was the box office clerk. We worked out of an office on 10th Street. It was one of the realtor offices, and they let us have a desk and a phone. And I had Bethany crawling around on the floor as a toddler, and I would be answering phone calls for people making reservations, which was often challenging because when Dana didn't think the play was ready to go, he would set the date back, and I would have to call all those opening night reservations and tell them that we had canceled it for another week, which was always a joyful job to have.
And when I asked Leslie when the theater started, she said 1985, I went back to the file cabinet in my garage, which contains all of my scrap files. This particular clipping is from Santa Paula Theater Center premieres this weekend. So I felt like I was there at the inception. And photo by John Nichols. I was shooting the cast photo. And this is Zoo Story, childhood and Zoo Story. And we're going back to revisit Albee. I think the productions that have influenced me the most have been the ones I don't understand. And at the time, I didn't understand that. Here's another clipping with Bill Lucking. And here's a clipping. That's Leslie and Rosemond, Brenda Miller. I cannot tell you how many lifelong friendships I have made through the Santa Paula Theater Center.
A guy named Jim O'Neill, who's the co-artistic director of Rubicon, was directing a show called Hot House in the basement when Santa Paula Theater Center was in the church basement. And he asked me to come and read for it. And I did. This is back when Dana Elcar and Bill Lucking were at the helm. So I went to read for it, and then Jim dropped out, and I got cast, and a man named Gerald Hyken, who now lives in San Francisco, directed it. Great production, and some local people that were in it were Tom Mueller and Doc Reynolds. It was a great show. Fun, fun, fun.
Well, it became clear right away that we wanted to grow. And of course, both of these men, having been involved in theater for most of certainly their adult lives, had grand plans of how the theater could grow. And so they started looking around for a space, and there were lots and lots of spaces available in terms that they were looking at, in terms of storefronts, that type of thing. But if my memory serves me correctly, Alan Teague came to them. This building was at that time owned by a group called the Ebell Club that had originally been given to or built for this organization. And as time went on, and more women were working, and there was not as much need for a women's club or not enough time or energy for a women's club, and that population was aging. They could no longer take care of the building in the way it had been taken care of. And the Teague McKevitt Corporation that he was involved with at that time no longer wanted to care for the building. So it was offered up to the Santa Paula Theater Center as a possible solution for us.
Well, we started with obviously Bill Lucking and Dana Elcar, and they for a while were on their own, and they decided that we probably should have a board. And I think it sort of coincided when we finally found the location at the Ebell. That took quite a while to find a location. And so either they asked me or I thought that it would be something fun to do, and I had the time. And so we started with the first board, and then they asked people who they thought would be good, and I asked people who I thought would be good. That you wanted people that would bring in other people, bring in money, and bring in an interest to the community. Well, I must say it was daunting for me to work with two actors. They were no piece of cake. To transform the Ebell Clubhouse into a theater was just an amazing project. My sister-in-law Jean Orcutt and Mimi Lucking were the designers, interior decorators. And through their contacts, they arranged a tremendous amount of, like the drapes and the carpets and all of that was just almost donated for free to the theater. It was just incredible how many people participated and wanted to give of themselves and their products. I remember when the first opened was Major Barbara. And of course, we were all scared to death. And the whole group, Dana and Bill, and we all sat in chairs outside because there was no room inside. I think the house sold out. And we're all sitting out there smoking and drinking, and oh my God, just like you see in a movie where the director is just wondering, how's it going on in the theater? And of course, everybody just roared. They just thought it was fabulous, and nothing but accolades. So I think the first couple of years, they probably did quite well. We'd have these gala opening nights, which were really fun. And that would bring, many people would come in, tuxedos, and they really did it up great, and that was something people began to look forward to come to the opening night. Where they now have that back theater, that was a dining room, and we'd have very fancy dinners, anything to raise money and get people to come in. Helen Caldwell was on the board, and she was very much a movie buff, and so she would find, we had silent movies, and we had just, old black and white movies. And I remember Mary Ann and I would sit up in the projection room or whatever, and and have the screen, you know, on the stage. And that was very popular. It was just showing classic movies that, you know, many people had never seen.
I raised my kids here, basically. I brought them in when we first had, at one summer we had a production of 100 Hats Theater, which had started in Ventura with a woman named Jean Marshall, and she brought it to Santa Paula when I guess they lost a revenue resource there or something. And so we had it here for a while here at Santa Paula Theater Center, where we had classes for children. And my kids started in the storybook theater classes, which basically were acting out fairy tales that they already knew, the Three Little Pigs, Little Red Riding Hood. And they would take turns being the different roles, so everybody would get a chance to do the play, to perform. And they all got to act and have a good time. And I think even if none of them go on to do acting either professionally or as community theater, they still develop a confidence and a feeling of self-worth that I think carries them through anything they choose to do in their life.
I was first introduced to the Santa Paula Theater Center through Jerry Castillo. He had wanted me to go out there for years as an actress, and I said, "Where? Santa what?" So he was doing I Never Sang for My Father, and he said it was a great part. So I took the drive, and I'm driving, I'm going through all these farms, and I'm thinking, who is going to see theater out here? What? People that pick strawberries? I don't think they're going to see theater. So I came in with a big attitude, and, you know, I don't think I want to do this. I don't know. And I didn't even audition yet, and he's trying to talk me into it. And it was the first time I saw the theater, and I thought, oh, it's so sweet. It's really sweet. But I don't want to drive out here. And I said to Jerry, will you pick me up? Will you drive me? I tried to get him to put a friend of mine in it so they would drive me. So anyway, Leslie said to me, just put your big girl panties on and come out here and do a play with us. So I said, okay.
The Santa Paula Theater Center is like an individual, and it grows like an individual and develops skills and becomes better at creating what it wants to be. So I've noticed that as this entity, it has developed and grown just like a person who becomes wiser and better able to cope with things. And I have a lot of respect for how it's done it. And you also have to have a lot of respect for the people who have seen the vision and supported it. When the Teague McKevitt Corporation donated this building to the Santa Paula Theater Center, I think that sort of expressed a confidence in the future that this theater center was going to grow. It's almost like giving the car keys to a 16-year-old. Okay, you're gonna go out and you're gonna do good things. You're not gonna go get drunk and crash. You're going to grow and develop and become a productive adult. And so I've watched the theater center do that. Make a few stumbles, have a few accidents, things happen outside of their control, but generally it's just been organically growing in a really positive way.
What Dana and Bill Lucking set up was a classic regional theater doing straight dramatic material that was contemporary and yet classic, and that's the kind of theater I've been involved in all my life. So that's still my artistic vision, is to present a variety of material to our audience, and also to bring in contemporary new pieces and to do them as well as we possibly can given our resources.
There's also a quality level that it reaches most times, not always like any theater, but the level of excellence, I think, is something that's also really appealing. I mean, when you get directors like David Ralph and Jerry Castillo, there's a level that most other, what you call community theaters, don't necessarily reach. And actually, when Dana was in charge, it was considered not quite community and not quite professional. It was somewhere in between, and the actors actually got paid something. even if it was out of Dana's own pocket. Yeah, yeah. But you know, it's everything. It's the beautiful theater. It's the friendliness. It's the talent. It's the creativity. And again, the artistic excellence.
The base is widened out. We get people from Carpinteria to San Fernando Valley coming to this theater. You'd think that being in Santa Paula that we'd draw mostly from Santa Paula, but that's not the truth. We're so diverse that we get people from all over, and I think it's a testament to the caliber of the shows, the performances that we put on here. This theater puts on productions that you'd pay 3 times as much to see 70 miles away.
It's been really great to hear what the public has been saying about Santa Paula, that this is the best theater we see. Even in LA, we go to LA and we just love the Santa Paula Theater Center's plays. So I think Santa Paula is a force to be reckoned with, and I think it's just going to get better and better. Not that it's not better right now, it's fantastic right now, but not everybody knows about it. So it's like this great little secret, and I just see Santa Paula as this theater that in the future people are going to be really talking about it in the theater world.
I wasn't intimately involved with the creation of the original Backstage. Just philosophically, I know that the artistic director at that time, Dana Elkar, and his partner, Bill Lucking, were always very interested in creating 2 separate stages. And at one point, the theater applied for a grant, and it was given. And it was a sizable grant from the Wygan Corporation. A platform stage was put in my memory, and risers were built. But I had acted on that stage, and I had done a show called Haiku, which was a very intimate show about autism. And I saw the energy that was created by the audience seeing these kind of alternative shows, or shows that were more intimate, shows that were more challenging. And it was something that was very, very much needed in our theater space. There are many things that, in order to keep afloat, you can't do on a main stage because you have to appeal to a broader mass of people.
What I really love about Santa Paula is that we strive to be as varied as possible. I love that the Backstage is available to present some newer and more exploratory and more experimental stuff. I love that we're starting to bring in other events like concerts and things like that from the community. And I love that we try to make it full. Each season we try to balance it out so it's not, okay, 3 dramas, 1 comedy, and it's not a cookie cutter season ever. There's always a nice balance of selections for an audience. And I think our audiences really enjoy. Many times they'll come to the show and say, that really wasn't my cup of tea, but wow, that was a great performance. And then the next one, oh, I love this one.
I've always thought their artistic vision was edgy. I mean, they've done plays I've never heard of, and I read lots of plays. And so any place that's going to be doing plays that I've never seen before is attractive to me as an audience member. And I want to come and see those kind of plays. And I like being surprised when they announce this season. I'm always, like this year's season, I was really surprised because there were plays on that list I had never heard of. And I think that's a good artistic vision to have. And Santa Paula has a history of doing that kind of thing.
They're not afraid here to do edgy material, which is nice. Usually, if you're going to give people something to take with them when they leave the theater, it generally involves something that's a little bit edgier, a little bit more controversial. We just did Glengarry, Glen Ross, which by anybody's estimation has to be considered controversial in terms of its language and life situation that it portrays. So yeah, that's where I think the difference is, between this theater and other groups. Not that other groups are deficient in any way, but I do think that there's a stronger commitment here to presenting challenging material to their audience.
You know, there's always this question of should theater entertain or educate people? And my feeling is it should do both. Because you're going out that night for a little fun, but theater is really there to educate people and teach people. But it should be both. You should have fun and learn something. You should leave the theater talking about, okay, that's what that is, yeah.
I do feel that as a theater goer, you deserve some type of catharsis. Not necessarily full and complete, but if after you leave the theater, if you have questions and it sparks conversation and discussion, that's best. That's the education part. So you're entertained and you're educated because you've thought further.
Probably given a choice, I would say educate. Because I think it's a lot easier to entertain your audience than it is to educate them. And I've always had a preference for plays that had something to say to the public at large regarding social issues, mores, things of that nature. But that's just my own preference. Obviously, the audience has to feel like they've been entertained, but I'm partial to the plays that have something to educate them with as well.
Entertainment's passive, theater's active. I think people that come to the theater to be entertained are picking the wrong medium. They may be entertained as a side thing, but shouldn't it be provoking them to question the meaning of life and to pursue the meaning of life more creatively and more actively?
Since theater began, pretty much, it's been used as a tool for social change. And I think that's terrific. Of course, there's always two sides, at least, to every issue. And I think the main idea is to get people to think, because there's a certain group you're never going to convince, and there's a certain group that's the chorus that you're preaching to, and then there's this group in the middle who you may just kind of, put a light bulb over them. And I think that's what you want to hope for, is to just put something out there and get people talking. But I think there's also something to be said just for entertaining. If somebody is depressed or sad or whatever, and they go and they can laugh for a few minutes, that's kind of a gift. And I think that's why, even though the economy is not doing well, people are still spending money on theater tickets and movie tickets because they need to get outside of themselves. So I think entertainment is almost kind of a noble cause, if it brings joy to somebody.
Masterclass was one of my favorite productions. I saw Zoe Caldwell do it in a preview, the second performance of that she ever gave. And she's the one who went on Broadway and won a Tony for it. But it was a second preview performance. And I was sitting there watching it, I just loved the piece, and I said, this is something that Linda Livingston should do. So this happens, this is not unusual in Santa Paula. I applied for the rights, and of course they were not available for 2.5 years. So I said, let me know when the rights become available for us. And it was about 2.5 years later that they called and said the rights are available. But I had given Linda the script 6 months before. So she had almost a year to bone up on her Italian. But I love that production.
My fondest memory of the Santa Paula Theater Center is when I did Enchanted April. And John McKinley had to do the scene where he came out naked. Well, with a really small, tiny little towel on him, but pretty much he was naked. So we were trying to figure out, he still should protect himself a little bit in case the towel falls. We should have something there. So Leslie came up with the idea of a sock.
Always thinking of my actors and wanting them to be comfortable. One of our actors had an unusual costume or lack of costume that he was going to have to appear in. Little did I know that he did not care one way or another, but of course I did, and I cared about the audience, so I thought that perhaps a certain body part could be protected with a sock.
So Leslie, being the person that she is with her wonderful vocabulary, I was walking by the prop table and she was there with John McKinley, and I hear Leslie say, well, this sock should fit the scrotum.
And there was a series of things that we tried to put on as some type of covering that just did not work. There was like a flesh-colored thong type thing. There was a sock involved.
I can't wait for you to meet him. I'm about to burst.
Excuse me, ladies.
Jerry was directing Taking Sides with David. And I went to the preview, and I'm the only one there, and Jerry says, Linda, what are you doing this weekend? And I said, nothing, why? And he goes, good, you're in the show. Overnight, I had to learn a German dialect, learn as much of the script as I could to play this grieving widow who was just like crazed out of her mind. I agreed to do it. I got... John McKinley lent me his German tape. I got a pretty good hold of the dialect overnight, but the lines, I wrote them all down because it was just one long monologue. And I remember, like, right before I was supposed to enter, I was backstage, and I thought I would wet my pants. I was so terrified, and I went out, and I started crying, which totally worked for the character. And I was myself crazed out of my mind, and it totally worked for the character. People thought that I had written this down because the character was grieving so much, she wanted to make sure she remembered what to say, and it was terrifying, but maybe one of the best performances I've ever given.
The one thing about live theater, you never know what's going to happen. That's what's so exciting about it. When we were doing our Christmas play here, not this past Christmas, but the year before, when we had Christmas bells, we had a chair that broke on stage during the scene. And the way the actors treat something that happens in the middle of the play in character and keep going, and you know that that chair was not supposed to break. You don't expect to see that happening every night. The audience gets that extra treat of that special thing that's happening. Certainly the tech crew gets that extra treat of seeing something different when they're working at the same play every night for 6 or 7 weeks, to have those little exciting things go wrong that make it a little bit more interesting.
Animals on stage are always a good thing. And I have to say, we were doing a show that required dogs. And we had 2 dogs. The wonderful big dog of one of the characters and a little prissy dog of the other characters, and both of them were dogs of defined character. And the big dog, we'd always bribe it with food before it went on stage. So it would behave when it came on stage. Well, apparently the bribing went a little bit too far. So the dog comes on stage, and of course it barfs all over the stage, which really stops the play, because the actors are just in shock, and they're trying very hard not to laugh and trying to figure out manically what to do about this, because you can't go on with the play with this big plop of stuff on stage. And so they called the actors that were playing the maid and butler to come on stage and clean it away.
One of our designers' name is Jeff Rack, and he's done a lot of wonderful sets up at the center. And one of the first sets that Jeff and I ever worked on together, I as an actor and he as both actually as an actor and a designer, was Man for All Seasons. So he was building, and usually because of budget restrictions and that at Santa Paula, we try to use as much of the materials that we have available on site, et cetera, et cetera. So he was building the set and he built these platforms, and I am a larger actor. And during one of the curtain calls, I'm coming down like 3 steps on a platform, and as I come past the one step, I take a step and I just hear this crack, and as I pull away, there's about a 10 to 12 inch hole in the platform. And so I asked Jeff about it, and he said, oh yeah, he said, I used some press board from outside, I probably should have used plywood. So Jeff Rack now only works in 3/4 plywood because of me.
Neil Simon's Laughter on the 23rd floor. And we had this young girl who was cast as the secretary, who would come in and out and deliver messages and such. And it was her first role, I imagine. And the door that she entered was a swiveling type of door, open backward and forward. One time, however, when she entered, she opened the door and the door fell off its hinges.
And so all of the actors on stage kind of froze and didn't know what to do at first. And then Ron Rizak, who's worked a lot at Santa Paula, a wonderful actor, went over to the telephone and called maintenance and told somebody to come up. And so all but one actor played that the door fell off on the wall. The girl playing the secretary decided she was just going to mime that the door was still there. So she literally mimed opening up the door and had to step over this like 4 foot wide, 7 foot tall door on stage.
When Max Prince entered, that was played by Fred Helsel, big commanding presence. He enters, looks at the door and says,
"Who broke my door?" And the actors just lost at that point, and so did the audiences.
What attracted me immediately the first time I walked into the theater, and then has not ceased to attract me and as an actor or director, is the relationship between the stage and the audience. The slight stadium seating allows an audience to have a very intimate relationship with what's happening on stage. And I love that relationship, and it's not easy to find in theaters.
When I think of the word theater, I see Santa Paula. And this was before I saw Santa Paula, so if you understand that. To me, a theater is quaint, and it's old, and it has character, and when you go in there, you feel like, it's almost like it feels like church.
It's a beautiful theater, for one thing. People are jealous. I know a lot of people in LA, and they come, they're used to the little black boxes, and they see this beautiful proscenium stage theater, and it's intimate enough to, it has a nice vibe to it, and it's friendly, and it's my home theater. I'm very biased towards it because I've been associated with it for so long, probably next to Leslie Nichols, longer than anyone. And so it has a very special place in my heart. It's been a long time.
Even though other people work in other places, this is where they feel at home. This is a place they love to come to and feel safe and comforted.
I think any institution has a personality, and even though the individual people that work within it change all the time, somehow that personality is transmitted from person to person. And there's something about this particular theater where the people are very, very supportive. There's a very connected family here in this theater, and that has been true. People who have, say, had an axe to grind or maybe a hidden agenda have faded away from this theater, and I consider it a very healthy psychological place to be.
I love being on the stage because it allows me to find the kid in me, and as an adult get to play, especially with my friends and fellow actors. I love to be able to play and just have a heck of a good time, and in turn then the audience has a great time.
I think that there's a love of the people that perform here, because it's totally it's an avocation. It's a love. It's a hobby. It's doing something that they receive some fulfillment, and you can see that when they do it. So when they're here, it's because they want to be here. It's not because they're thinking about the next role or the next paycheck or what I'm going to be doing in the summertime. It's because they're right here, they're right now, and they're performing for this group of people. And it just makes it so much more enriching.
My ex-minister, Marjorie Leeming, one of her greatest teachings and phrases was, bloom where you're planted. I mean, she came to Santa Paula and bloomed, and she was always encouraging people to bloom where you're planted, not wait to get to Hollywood, not use this as a proving ground, and oh boy, you're pretty good, why don't you get into a commercial, or all that stuff, you know, that you get as an actor. And I think that what's unique about Santa Paula is that the people that are associated with Santa Paula Theater Center and a lot of other things, there's a strong community, and so we help each other and work together and collaborate. And then there's a strong emphasis on blooming where you're planted, which is going to be to achieve the highest you can, the best you can, out of what you got, and not wait for Hollywood.
I just fell in love. You know what Santa Paula did for me? I fell in love with theater again, because I was doing a lot of theater in LA. And when you do theater in LA, you don't usually necessarily do it for the right reasons. So you're doing it to showcase and to hopefully get a movie or a TV show. And I came from New York, so I did theater for doing theater. You do theater because you do theater, not to get a part in a movie. So when I went to Santa Paula, I fell in love with theater again. I said, oh, this is why we do theater.
The feeling that I get when I'm doing a production here, or when we finished a production here, is always very warm and very close to my heart. I can probably count on one hand the number of productions that I really was ambivalent about seeing end. That's how I measure the success of this group, is the way it makes me feel. I have fond memories of everything that I've done here. And nothing stands out except the atmosphere that's created for the actor in this particular house. And that's what I'll always have fond memories of.
I think it's always remarkable that a theater survives, but it does. And it's a miracle that it does, but it's also reinforced the entire human spirit and why we do what we do. And 25 years of Santa Paula is made up of generosity of spirit from enormous numbers of people. And hopefully they'll be here for another 25 years. And more and more make it an integral part of the Santa Paula community, and therefore the larger regional community that it lives in, because it should be.
Congratulations on lasting 25 years as a community theater. There are many theaters that aren't able to last that long, and congratulations on building a theater company that has so many wonderful people that I can work with. I mean, these are really good people to work with. Theater is loaded with egos, and I find at Santa Paula, you just don't have those clashes of egos there. I just haven't experienced it yet. Maybe they're there, but I haven't experienced it yet. They've been very supportive, and they really support creative people. And I want to thank particularly Leslie Nichols and Fred and David for giving me the opportunity to direct there. And I have some ideas for next year.
Keep on keeping on, Santa Paula. You know, I think you're great. I love you. And I look forward to being back here again in something in the near future. Hint, hint, David.
I would love to say that it has been one hell of a ride, and I've had a blast, and here's to 25 more. I mean, the Santa Paula Theater Center is such a unique theater in its makeup of all the people involved that put not only the productions on stage, but allow that artistic freedom to happen and allow what happens at that center to happen to the community. And without everyone, from the board members to the volunteers to everybody on stage and backstage, it couldn't happen, and I couldn't be working with a nicer group of people.
25 years, that's a silver anniversary. That's a milestone. Although I haven't been involved with the theater for 25 years, I was involved with it shortly after they made this building their home. And I could probably see myself being involved with it for years to come. It's always been a safe haven for me, as well as others.
I would like to say congratulations, Santa Paula Theater Center, on your 25th anniversary. You are my home away from theater home.
Oh, Fluffer's here. That's not a flip-off. I always do that.
Yeah, Leslie was Stooge. Sorry, Leslie. Leslie was Scrooge.
Okay, that's it.
What? I got more stories.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry.
Is this all being taped right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'll cut this all out.
Goes in the background.